Right, so Israel's determination to not leave Lebanon, despite the ceasefire extension they have managed to weasel out of overseers France and the US, and which has shamefully been agreed to by the Lebanese government, is already blowing up in their faces. People in Lebanon are saying balls to Israel, and we're going home, and are making their way back to their villages from whence they came. And as for Hezbollah, well, they've not agreed to this ceasefire extension at all. They abided by the original ceasefire. They were urged to be patient by the Lebanese government. They wanted to retaliate as they spent 60 days watching painfully as Israel flouted that ceasefire. And for them to get an extension until the 18th of February now to leave when they still attack Lebanon and its people and stop them from returning to their homes, well, patience is rapidly running out. Right, so where Israel would love to project an image of having beaten Hezbollah into non-existence and a message sent to the Arab world not to mess with them, between the ignominy of Netanyahu's desperation to overturn the ceasefire in Gaza to protect himself and his position, and the desperation to carry on in Lebanon for a bit longer, having won an extension, what has actually been projected, and is certainly being carried in a lot of foreign media and alternative media outlets here in the West, and in Israel itself especially, arguably most damaging, is the perception that they have lost to Hamas and Hezbollah as a result, and all at the same time. Where Gaza's now returned to what is left of their homes in the north, people in Lebanon are now doing likewise, heading south, back to their own towns and villages, and that is despite a ceasefire extension in their case, saying that Israel now have until February 18th to get out of southern Lebanon. They have said balls to Israel. They have said by their actions that we don't fear you. Get out of our country, we're going home. And Israel, in typical fashion for them, leave more bodies in their wake as they beat its retreat. For example, yesterday saw cars queuing up waiting to return to the village of Qiyam in southern Lebanon, an area that has been the target of much Israeli atrocity when they were supposed to be leaving under the terms of the ceasefire. This was one of just 18 villages that ordinary Lebanese people ended up liberating from Israeli occupation during protests on Sunday, the day the ceasefire was supposed to end. And an excerpt from Dropsite News explains a little bit more. It reads, "The protests followed Israel's violation of a previously agreed upon ceasefire which required its withdrawal from southern Lebanon within 60 days. Protesters, many displaced for over a year, marched miles through war-damaged areas to confront Israeli military blockades, enduring gunfire that killed 22, including 6 women, and wounded 130 on Sunday. Protests continued Monday, with Israeli forces again firing on demonstrators, killing 2 and injuring at least 17 more. While Lebanese armed forces also entered towns like Hula and Aita al-Shab, local media reports it was civilians who led the efforts, prompting a retreat from the regional military superpower that had wrought carnage across Lebanon in the months prior. Some examples of the deeds of these ordinary civilians are testament to some real bravery. One woman stood in the middle of the road ordering Israeli soldiers, fully armed, to leave her town. Others took a different tack, confronting Israeli Merkava tanks, standing there and laughing at them. Some chanted the name of assassinated Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in the face of the IDF. And in one town, the armed IDF was driven out by a bunch of civilians arming themselves with road signs. An image which will, I'm sure, become iconic of this time is that of a woman blocking the path of a Merkava tank. So far, not a sign of Hezbollah other than people returning to their villages flying their flag, as they did so, though, and the Lebanese army following in behind. Yet, when you have people chanting, for example, Nasrallah's name, Hezbollah clearly have still scored a massive win here. The support of the people still very much theirs. It's notable they call for them and not their Lebanese government, isn't it? But well, it doesn't stop there. Oh, no. Israel's stupidity was to think they could remain in Lebanon despite all the atrocities they have committed, and they'd still come off best. It's like they still don't get that they are now global pariahs for all the warmongering and atrocity they commit, and keep on committing, and still are. It's like it still doesn't register. That throwing millions into Hezbollah, into their propaganda campaigns, as that is, will rescue their image somehow. But it won't. And it is the images and the news being carried on social media that speaks far loudly than their Hezbollah ever could. By talking heads like me as well. By true journalists, worthy of the name, undermining the nonsense narratives of mainstream media and bought and paid for politicians that are making sure of that. Making sure that those of us on the side of the innocent people caught up in the middle of this mess are properly recorded and represented and heard. Having lost the optics, as Israel did so long ago, though, the matter of the ceasefire extension in Lebanon and the optics of that are coming in for just as much attack. For one, Israel still tried to play for more time, quibbling over the wording of the extension, wanting it for an additional 10 days than they got, showing no real commitment or willingness to leave Lebanon at all, despite running away from civilians armed with street signs. But where does all of this leave Hezbollah now in relation to all of that? They'd accepted the original ceasefire agreement. It was touted in the media as an agreement between Israel and Hezbollah more than the Lebanese government. Hezbollah abided their time despite Israeli atrocity. Israel lost the optics. They haven't. They've abided by the ceasefire. And that's crucial given they don't get any positive optics anyway, especially in the West, designated terrorist group as they are. And I have to make that point clear given the laws I live under here in the UK. But regardless of that, they are nonetheless emboldened with so many of the people of Lebanon seemingly on their side. And if there can be any single mistake that can be pointed out that Israel have made that is bigger than any other, it is the fact that they haven't defeated Hezbollah, and if anything are now seen by much of the world as a worse entity for it, despite that failure. Where Hezbollah accepted and abided by the 60-day ceasefire, therefore, they won't accept the extension, and this has been made clear in a televised address given by Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem, which Anadolu agency have reported on, and they've got nothing to lose by refusing to accept this ceasefire extension either. An exception of Anadolu's coverage reading, Hezbollah's Secretary-General Naim Qassem on Monday strongly expressed that there is no justification for extending Israel's deadline to withdraw from southern Lebanon. Qassem made the statement during a televised address, saying that his group will not accept any further delay of the withdrawal process. The agreement's deadline expired on Sunday, and there is no reason for any extension, Qassem said, referring to the ceasefire agreement between Lebanon and Israel. While Hezbollah adhered to the terms of the agreement, Israel violated it 1,350 times, he added. Qassem highlighted that despite these violations, Hezbollah initially refrained from retaliating. At one point we considered responding to Israel's aggressions, but the Lebanese authorities urged patience, he explained. While the Israeli violations were painful, we decided to be patient, leaving the responsibility to the state, as it should be the primary authority in confronting Israel. 1,350 violations of the ceasefire, and Israel get granted an extension anyway to keep on committing even more, it seems. It is a sick joke. And Hezbollah are not, it seems, prepared to wait any longer if Israel do not start leaving now. They had 60 days to get out, plenty of time if they were true to their word. They simply had no intention of leaving, however, and now Hezbollah have no intention of abiding by any further delay to them being able to defend themselves once more against Israeli attack, any more than the people of Lebanon can stand to sit by and wait to return to their homes. Israel has once again fallen victim to its own supreme arrogance and that of Netanyahu, and all they've done is hand Hezbollah, in the immediate term, a victory without them having to lift a finger or fire another bullet. They thought they could get away with invading southern Lebanon and remaining there under the pretext of protecting a UN resolution that actually stated they had no business being there at all, used a ceasefire negotiated in part by an Israeli working for the US government and Amos Hochstein to justify their presence, and felt protected enough by vested political and media interests that they could violate that ceasefire 1,350 times. They thought they could force new terms on the people of Lebanon, and they said no. They thought they could force their will on Hezbollah, and they've said no. And while Israel was flouting the ceasefire, the Lebanese army moved south of the Litani River to replace Hezbollah, as per the agreement, in those areas as required, and Hezbollah moved out as required. And so further Israeli excuses to have a ceasefire extension over safety concerns didn't bear out either. Yet still they got granted it. And then whilst all of this was happening, the people of Gaza were able to return to the north at the same time. So you have two ceasefires under global public scrutiny, and Israel quite clearly having lost the argument and lost the battle of optics in both cases. Defeat doesn't come much heavier than in the court of public opinion. And across the world, Israel is seen as a bunch of pariahs and losers, and deserved losers for what they've done. Those supporting them, especially the mediators in this farce, are tarred with the same brush. Hezbollah have scored a big win here, and all of it is a direct result of Israel's own arrogance and stupidity, and another 3 weeks of them procrastinating about leaving Lebanon. Whatever that ends up looking like won't change anything now either. More of Israel's lies have been exposed back in Gaza this week as well. A new report by Israeli news outlet Ynet revealed that the events of October 7th were not at all at how Israel portrayed them, throwing into question all of the atrocity Israel had carried out in Gaza over the last 16 months, which of course led to the invasion into Lebanon as well, supposedly to take out Hezbollah, who were firing on Israel in solidarity with the people of Gaza. Get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe before you do so, though, to help support the channel, which is massively appreciated as well. And also make sure you don't miss out on all new daily content which drops daily. I'll hopefully catch you on the next video, in which case, cheers folks.